Well, good afternoon. It is really a pleasure. I hope you get used to my accent as soon as possible. And once we have done this, I will try to give a broader perspective on the questions that we need to address, I guess, globally, which is not issue by issue, but rather the connections that are between extractive activities, not industries, but because they are not industries, they are activities. And so if I had to underline text of the economic discourse today, I would probably underline everything, because most of the concepts we use are simply disputable in all senses imaginable we can even think of. 10 years ago, a small community in Patagonia, the community of Esquel, started to the awareness of a plan to install a mining company, Meridian Gold. And it was a couple of miles away from the city. And the people who used to be very conservative started to move and to find around. And due to the possibilities of communications, we built a very broad network of researchers, neighbors, organizations, and started to analyze not only what happens there, but the history of mining and politics. Not just 5 years, 10 years, 200 years, 500 years, to find out what were the strategies of the mining companies and the relations between mining companies and governments. Obviously, having the opportunity to read people like Harold Innis and the way he theorized about the organization of places and distance and the organization of power in distance allowed us also to understand the relations between the press, the politics, and many other aspects of social life. So one thing we found, when I talk, I use the word we, I mean the assemblies, as a network of people that collectively think and talk and exchange ideas and information. So the interesting thing is that in 2003, this small community rejected the plan and made a plebiscite. And despite all the investment in public relations, it was huge by the company, 82% of the population voted against this mining company. And they had to leave. They obviously said, in 10 years we will be back and this assembly will have gone, which didn't happen. Now, by then, they tried to fix the relations, and they said, this is our fault. They didn't understand our plans. So they sent someone from an organization called Business for Social Responsibility. And this was a certain person, and the people expected that person in Esquel, and they saluted him in the streets and say, hello, Jim. And he was surprised. Why do they know me? Because we already had found out what his schedule was his idea. So what I will try to do now is to discuss some of the main issues that we discuss currently, because we have started first with an involvement of organizations such as Greenpeace, who wanted to lead our attention to cyanide. And we said, no, this is not cyanide. This is a colonial exploitation. This is far more than one chemical. It is a broader system of exploitation of nature and people and that is involved in this. So, and then we started to connect our analysis on soil, on labor and land and capital in ways that made us possible to say that agribusiness, for instance, soy beans, which now occupies soybeans 60% of the arable land of Argentina, is an open pit mining. Mining is not just extracting minerals and metals, it's also extracting the life of soil. So it's far more than that. Then we came to oil and then fracking, which is now, and fisheries. So basically, despite some theorists that say that we are going from the Washington consensus to the commodity consensus, we say that drawing from authors like Eduardo Galeano, Open Veins of Latin America, there is nothing new in what is going on. We have an old system that is reshaping permanently and trying to adapt discourses and policies permanently and trying to convince us that it is a new situation that we have to deal with, and but it is almost the same as 500 years ago. And that the system doesn't allow us even to think of independence and detachment or independent lines of production or autonomy, but likes us to draw different lines and fracturing not only the soil, but fracturing our minds. And mind fracturing is far more dangerous than soil fracturing. I mean fracking, yes. So, just to see the dimensions of what we are talking about. Probably due to a combination of strategies in the diplomatic area, in the finances, in banking, in many other things, Chile and Argentina have created a third country between both countries, which is this area. But it is not only this one. This is a huge country between, it's a virtual country. And in this country, you can exploit regardless of previous agreements on environment and labor agreements in your own country. So it is an overarching organization that allows to create this backstage and front stage. And this is a concept I will use through this conversation we have now, because the backstage is practically a zoning. And zoning is something that has been debated not only in the Chicago school in the 20s or 30s, but zoning means how to organize conflicts within a city, in Chicago with Polish people, but also in other areas in which the front stage even doesn't consider what is going on in the backstage. So we not only consider the trajectory of labor and the merchandise or the product, we consider the ecological trajectory as well. So that would be, in terms of Marx, the second contradiction. Now, very interesting is that most people from the left seem not have to read Marx in that terms. So the ecological Marx, which has been discussed by many people in North America, such as Bellamy Foster or the journal Capitalism, Nature, Socialism, are seemingly not aware of the fact that just certain concepts are not enough to explain what is happening today. So this is just to see that most people don't know what our basins are, cuencas. Yes, basins, is right. So they are huge, but this internal, and this starts with the San Juan is the place where we have Barrick Gold. And this reaches to Rio Negro. This is our province here. And this is one river that has, the first one to has been designated to be a river that can be sacrificed. The second one will be probably the Rio Negro, the Rio Colorado, sorry. The Negro comes this way, is probably the next one because they are starting fracking in huge proportions. You must imagine that Argentina is with US and China, the third largest deposit, which is a very questionable concept, or of non-conventional oil and gas. So, the next one, please. So, if our intellectuals, such as Harold Innis or Raúl Scalabrini Ortiz, studied 50 or 60 years ago the connections between the railroads and power, and both were contemporaries, it is very impressive to acknowledge that most of our intellectuals don't even know what the IRSA is. Infraestructura de Integración Regional Sudamericana. This doesn't not only involve South America or Latin America, but also the northern states. Most of our people don't bother to go into these connections between power and structure and meaning. The next one, please. So, this is one of the things we want to discuss. So, paraphrasing Milton Friedman, one of the fathers of the neoliberalism, this is what we want to avoid. Next one, please. The next one. So, what are those lights? Well, all these lights is the South Atlantic. And they use enormous amounts of lights to attract fish. The next one, please. So, the larger lights are oil fields. And this is in the ocean. So these are fisheries that are really spoiling the sea and all the basin in proportions one can even imagine. So there are really light fields that attract fish and take everything. Next one, please. So when we talk about plans in our land, there are overlaid plans by governments, by corporations, by provincial governments, and most of them are really not connected to each other. So most plans are even contradictory to each other. Some of these are based on the idea of creating new areas for forestation. But forestry, I mean commercial forestry, is probably the third level of biofuels. Naturally, they're using the word bio, which means life, but it is exactly the contrary. So the next one is exactly what we are expecting. So this is the sort of bio system they are trying to create in larger areas. Next one, please. So we have a number of enormous corporations, with, especially after 2008, started a system of backing up capital through different approaches to investment. One of the preferred system of investment has been land. And land is, if you visit the webpage landgrabbing.org, you will find what is going on in Africa, especially in Latin America, but also in Canada. The Farmers Association of Canada has issued a tremendous document on this, on land grabbing. And most of these cases, this is soya a couple of years ago. This has been probably 5 years ago. But what we have in the upside here is the expansion of dengue. Because diseases like dengue exploit the go from the land to the cities once you cut the forest for this kind of exploitation, shale exploitation. The next one, please. So what happens when you have an exploitation in agribusiness where not many people is engaged? Well, most people will migrate. So we have rural exodus, and this rural exodus means a huge problem within cities, and this huge problem derives in speculation in areas that are gentrified and the exploitation and marginalization of other sectors. So HSBC, which is Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, which is one of the largest banks in the world, certainly is very happy to know that 200,000 people per day are migrating to the cities. But if we see the other side of the coin, this is, migration. Our governor has signed with China a huge agreement in which 65% of our land would be used for production of food for China. We rejected this, and finally we made a case, and for once we won. But a couple of weeks ago, the government of Argentina has signed for all the provinces a huge compromise and compromised with China and made a next agreement, commercial agreement. The next one, please. So this is our governor, and in order to offer a huge energy consumer, which is China, and who believes, because the creer and crecer is to believe. They believe, they grow. The idea that growth is the most important case. So Mr. Saiz is offering minerals, water, food, transportation, ports, subsidies, territory, anything else. So he is really offering everything in order to be part of this story of growth around the world. The case failed. The government of Argentina is heavily involved in convincing everyone that it is a progressive government, and we have found out that, contrary to that, they have meetings with all the companies and corporations and have said, the next one, please. So what gentrification means is that you have an individualistic consumption of nature, and this frontage that is that you can see even in Vancouver or in Shanghai and other places, empty buildings to attract the rent, the capital that is flowing, and this is a problem everywhere. But, I mixed up this one, but rural exploitation means also that Argentina and the region we live on have eroded very heavily, and in a few decades has lost his capacity to grow. And so we have these dust bowls, and dust bowl is something that you know in North America very well, and it is, I guess, John Steinbeck, who wrote a great book, and there is this book, this film by John Ford, Grapes of Wrath, exactly. And it is so to recover this soil is very difficult. It is very simple to destroy land. And now we are having these cases in which sand in South America is heavier per square meter than the sands from Sahara in the Mediterranean. So the next one, please. So this is the case. So you have cities full of people that has to occupy land for minimal portions of land, square meters, thousands, millions of them, only in Argentina. Argentina is a huge country. There's no way to accept by any way, but in any conception of life, it is not acceptable to have hunger in this country. It's absolutely unacceptable. But we have people that have these different approaches to life, and they don't even want to know what is going on. And this is the next problem. Yeah. So this is our response to most of things. And in these collectives, we discuss a lot. And I will go now into some of the points we currently discuss, just to give you an idea, because I can't really go into these complexities in all the extension I would like to. But these assemblies are formed by small original assemblies in the terms of the 2001 movements in the crisis, so-called crisis of 2001, by unions, especially teachers and others, small parties, independent neighbors, professionals, and so on. One thing we developed is the idea of going from single issues to complexity. And what we studied and discussed in courses, in seminars, in meetings, is that if in the 90s, a great part of our economy was privatized, in the 90s also politics was privatized. And guess how many NGOs we have in Latin America who are working in a parallel, para-political way? It's over 400,000 NGOs. And they are mostly created to divert from politics. So we have the political parties who have lost its connection to politics. They are basically marketing agencies. So they have lost their capacity to react, to discuss. They are really afraid to confront politically. They are really in a very state of escaping from the public. And then you have a number of NGOs that have been directed in the last 60 or 70 years towards the depoliticization of life. And this is why they try to convince you to go to single spaces of analysis. One of the victims of that was Theodor Adorno. Adorno, when he came to Columbia University, it was the Princeton project. He was hired by the Rockefeller Foundation. And he wanted to write about the cultural industry. But they told him, no, you'd have to write on radio and the impact of radio. But I want to write about the broader picture. No, we pay you to write on radio. So it was a very interesting discussion, and this is where we learned that most of the conflicts we have derive from this permanent diversion and fragmentation of reality. And that tried to convince us that the question is either mining or transportation or tourism or whatever, but everything is disconnected. And this disconnection is, I guess, it's probably intended to make us sick. And there are different, this is why this is very important to understand the connection between psychology and politics. And I'm looking forward to discuss these things that have been brought many years ago by many people, such as a member of the Frankfurt School like Wilhelm Reich, but many others. So politics is a major question also of psychology. We started also deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy, in the terms of C.B. Macpherson and other authors, means that it is fair enough to have a representative democracy, but we need also direct democracy. And there is no excuses to avoid the presence of people immediately. If someone can have a cash in a cash machine, why shouldn't we have instant information about heavy decisions that are in that? So there is no excuses. We have a system that's had 200 years, and it is completely outdated, and this is one thing. Then we have the discussion which is going on right now about naturalism. The nature in terms of, I mean, the Nazis had nature in mind. So if Hitler had nature in mind, his idea of nature was obviously that it is better to have hierarchies, and this species is more important than this one, and this sort of division of but we are not only interested in how green the Nazis were, but how Nazi the corporations are. This is the other thing. So how these ideas are still present in our current life. And this is not an easy case because, well, we have been reading and enjoying reading Murray Bookchin, but his wife, for instance, wrote an interesting book with Peter Staudemeyer about the neo-Nazis and environmentalism. So I strongly suggest to get into that discussion. That is very, very, very interesting, really. Then we have to discuss things like the distance between promises and discourse and concrete policies. Because what is going on in Latin America is that Latin America has left, the government have a less discourse, but basically are continuing the policies of neoliberal agendas. And there are the corporatization of universities, which is something he's addressing, is taking place not only in terms of David Noble, but also in terms of the setting agenda of the whole system of research of our countries. And this is strategic. This agenda setting of research, Connie said, most cases are really oriented to justify investments, programs, plans, and to divert the attention from the most relevant questions. And the most relevant questions should be organized, in my view, at least in three interdependent levels, which is the empirical, or what is visible. Say a polluted river is a polluted river, no question about this. It has or has not heavy metals. And then the political and judiciary level, or administrative level, and then the philosophical. If you cut one of these three, then you're lost. So this connection has to be maintained. So if we disconnect philosophy from the empirical, which can happen to some philosophers, I guess, then we have philosophies that well, play around with words and concepts and categories and whatever, but no, not going into and on the other side, if you are only measuring in terms of traditional instruments of the economy, such as statistics about what is going on, you will be convinced that it is good to go and to follow the growth rate of China. And that this is important, regardless of what happens here and there. And if China goes now and transforms this middle class that is living in the coastal area, these 500 million people, if they transform their diet to olive oil or to Big Macs, well, that affects other regions of the world. So it's very important to maintain these things in mind. Then we are following closely issues like communications policy. My origin, this disciplinary origin, is communication. So communication in Latin America started with modernization strategies, transfer of technology, and in the 50s and 60s after World War II. And most universities agreed on the idea that modernization meant to have more than one set every 100 inhabitants of a place, and that modernization had to be measured in terms of media consumption. On the contrary, we think that communication is not only what you say, but also what you don't say. And I suggest you to read this great book we co-published with a Canadian author who is Brewster Neen. Brewster Neen has written a book that is entitled Invisible Giant. And he explains the strategies, the secret strategies of Cargill. Cargill, okay, great. In Canada, Brazil, and Argentina. And this giant has been invisible for decades. And no one knows the structure of minimal resolutions that are below the very nicely written laws. The laws are obviously always very, very nice, but then you have the resolution that can divert and transform this structure of written agreements into well, you can't really go through it. It is overlapping of situations. So what we are now discussing also, just to finish and give you an opportunity to consider the limits of my exposition, is economy in self-defense. Economy in self-defense means that we are now looking not after doing more of the same, but means to analyze the circuits of money and products, especially food and beverages, in our region. So if La Via Campesina, so la Confédération Paysanne, which is an organization that has is based in Jakarta right now, but is all. I mean, the Canadian farmers belong to La Via Campesina. It's an international organization. American farmers do belong to this. The French, the Italian, everyone. So more than 200 million farmers of the world belong to Via Campesina. We are talking about food sovereignty. And food sovereignty means that you make a choice of what you buy and how you produce it. José Bové, in 1999, who is a French farmer who was against a number of corporations, including McDonald's in France, explained us there in the first meetings of the anti-globalization meetings we had in 1999 in Seattle, that everything you grow and how you grow and what you grow is a political decision. So everything is really has to be brought into the debate. And we find out that we, as a region that had the climate of La Toscana in Italy, we are importing the equivalent. Both provinces, Neuquén and Rio Negro, have 1 million inhabitants. Both provinces are importing from the north food and beverages for more than the deficit of food of Cuba. So it's 1.5 millones, how much is that? 1.5 billion, which is a huge amount of money. So one has to consider that Greece, the crisis of Greece is about 20 billion. So if in population, 2 small provinces import from the northern part of the province this is that they have to depend on royalties. If you depend on royalties, from where would they come? From mining. This is the circuit. So if you don't have money, you can't buy stuff. If you don't have stuff, you rely on royalties. And then your government concedes huge territories for mining, fracking, agribusiness, and so forth. So how this connects to politics, to literature, to arts, to the hyper-consumption of symbolic products in the cities is enormous. And we prefer to be in a place that is unsecure in terms of preciseness, of theoretical preciseness. I don't want to be precise theoretically. We need to shake everything. We don't believe in the system at all. We see that our universities are from the top to the bottom, traversed by agreements with corporations, with militaries, with politicians of all kinds, and we don't think that this is a good base. So I know I could be more academic on this, but I prefer to be as imprecise as possible. So if I have created, I hope, a sense of insecurity, transmitted this insecurity, I will be happy. So please feel free to throw things to me, questions, papers, and we can start some ideas and discussions.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yep.
I really enjoyed your talk very much, and especially like the way you interwove in the talk some of the things that I was mentioning in terms of our programming and our attempt to sort of bring various kinds of theoretical and empirical elements together in a constellation. And I was quite fascinated by your discussion of the need for an empirical moment, an administrative moment, and a philosophical moment. And I think in our historical moment, and this has been the case for some time now, really through what's generally referred to as postmodernism, there's been a lot of skepticism, a lot of, in fact, hostility towards the idea of totality.
Yeah.
And it seems that what you're suggesting is we need to bring totality back in, but in this kind of insecure way, because totality has always been linked to some notion of teleology and progress, right? And a very kind of thing that is motivating a certain kind of legitimation of growth and a certain understanding of development and so on. So I'd be interested to hear you speak a little bit more about how this new constellation of knowledge production is proceeding in Argentina and South America.
Many things are happening, for instance, in Brazil. Brazil is going on the streets. It starts with a sparkle, but then it goes to different ways. And the government of Brazil haven't really expected this tsunami of reactions. And they try to settle down using government-friend NGOs to say, well, nothing is really so serious, we can handle this. But what people feel about what is going on in Brazil is far-reaching. So it is not only the amount of fees you pay on a bus, it is far more complex, and we can't really understand how complex and deep that is. So the government tends to see it's like making poles. So they measure the surfaces. Sarkozy in France used to govern with doing polls, instant polls, measure the surface. And the surface never reflects the history of the historical roots of what is going on. This idea of historical roots is not only, and it only has not only direct consequences. So it's the idea of impact. The word impact is very good for meteorite, but not for something that is discussed in society. So it's not a natural. So what is done in society is not natural, it's artificial. And since it is artificial, it needs to be discussed. So impact is something that is natural. You can't avoid it. It happens. It has an impact, poof. Yeah? But not this one. So the debates go around every day. So if I miss one day not reading the emails, where I have 120 emails, apart from them which I reject every day. But the debate is permanent, and it is multi-layered and multidimensional. And the other thing is we discuss not direct impact, but multiple consequences and ramifications. So how can you measure child abuse and transform it into value and say, we will pay you back the damage? So nature has no way to be, so environmental management is a concept that we reject completely. This is technocracy, pure technocracy. Okay, try to convince a child that has been abused that it will be compensated by some specialist in terms of money. It can be maybe consolated or contained as a human being with someone who is in solidarity, but not. So right now what is going on is this connection, global connection. So there are connections to every part of the world in which we have. And this is why I'm here, because we have friends here in the region that has signed our declarations and has agreed, and we have connections, and Canada and Argentina have a lot to say in common, despite all the differences, but also despite the commonalities. Yes?
A teeny question from the philosophy side, but then a bigger one on the political division.
Yeah.
I kept thinking in terms of what philosophers or what philosophy would be a good one to help in this project. I kept thinking of the work of Enrique de Sel.
Yeah, yes,
I'm just wondering whether there's any influence or knowledge of Argentina in his work, because he does tie a lot of almost all the themes you mentioned.
Since this is on a base of construction, most people will rely on their own different breeds. Some people will rely on Heidegger, and others will rely on Marx alone, and others will rely on Badiou or Agamben or whatever. But yeah, or Guy Debord. Guy Debord in 1971 wrote an extraordinary article named A Sick Planet. And this is a marvelous piece of work. Guy Debord, the Spectacle Society. And so you have some from the French side, and then you have those who are not specifically philosophers in terms of European conceptions, but we have created a new category of people that are thinkers, generally, which are anti-colonial, not the decolonial Duke University people like Mignolo and all this breed, which is interesting. We have many friends, Lander, Quijano, this decolonial or post-colonial studies, post-colonial. So everyone is in a variety of conceptions working together, while previously either you were in the left or in the right, nothing else. And now we are considering different approaches and ideas. And so it is broader. I guess we have to wait. I remember that interview they made, I guess it was the BBC, made to Chu Enlai. And they asked him, what do you think has been the influence of the French Revolution? And he answered, well, it's too early to tell. And so I don't expect immediate responses. When people that are used to very fast answers and who create the idea that time and speed is something that is shaped by the Bolsa de Valores, stock markets, well, why should we accept the speed, the velocity of stock markets? This is not our time. Once they asked a group of people, well, when can you answer us if you accept this mining company going into your area? And the answer was, well, we know, maybe 100 years. No, we can't wait so much. Well, this is your problem. So philosophy is yes.
I'm wondering if you could say a little more about the political and legal regime within which the popular assemblies worked, because they seem to have had a degree of success, and the problems that you alluded to, fragmentation and difficulty of sustaining over time, I think are problems that we have in a big way here. So I would be very interested if you could talk about where you think that purchase on some success came from.
The legal framework is very weak. The legal framework has took many definitions from the 19th century and then from the 20th century in terms of very vague and vast ideas about environment as something that surrounds us instead of considering ourselves part of nature. And since that is the case, I understand that it is very limited what we can expect from the legal system, which doesn't mean that we don't agree and go to the Constitution and say, hey, listen, according to Constitution Article number 41 specifically, we do want you to protect the environment. If you don't, then you will go into political troubles. But the next reaction will be that. So, and politicians are very, very tricky about this. So they don't like people in the streets. And it is quite possible. This is a couple of weeks ago. So it's not, I didn't download it from the internet. So it's not a copy-paste. Yes?
Was your president, Christiana, is that her name? Christina?
Christina.
Yeah. When she first ran, wasn't she a little on the left, but now she sort of switched over to the right?
Well, personally, I don't like the idea of talking about people but models.
Okay.
So the model of this government, regardless, the Muppet who is in the Casa Rosada doesn't matter. So so it doesn't matter who it is, because the seat of this government, of the governments in Argentina, are of Mr. El Sillón de Rivadavia, the seat of Mr. Rivadavia. Mr. Rivadavia in 1826, who created the foreign debt with the British, the same foreign debt that took Canada, administered by the Baring brothers. The karma of that seat is that everyone who will sit in that seat is biased to accomplish the same agenda. So it is very difficult to expect any government of Argentina with some moments, especially when Europe was involved in the world wars. Then you had the industrialization of Argentina. Argentina in the 50s was as industrialized as France. It was more industrialized as Canada. Argentina had 3 million newspapers per day in the 30s. So what has lost Argentina? We could produce everything. Well, I remember many factories in many cities. Now, Cristina, when she comes into power, and the promises she does are especially regarding the past and human rights regarding the past. We obviously accept that. Why not? On the contrary, we want that. But we also consider the present time human rights and the future generations. So I think that if I understood your question, is that it is not a left government.
Do you see much hope for the future of Argentina on environmental?
I don't see very much hope in the world about the environment. So it's not contextual. So I don't think that soybeans is or the spillage of oil in the Gulf of Mexico is a local issue. This category has to be erased, abolished. There is no more local problems. So I can't be happy in Toronto, regardless of the metals, if they come from Peru, from Bolivia, or from Asia. This idea of front stage and backstage is a problem. So Argentina is part of the same problem everywhere. So the climate change, Cristina or Perón or Che Guevara or Gandhi are too small compared to the climate change. I hope you understand what I mean. It's that Argentina is a statistic in that terms. Yes.
I'm going to go down to really small.
Yes.
A few years ago, the employees of various factories in Argentina occupied the factories, which sort of sounds like getting away from the neoliberal world. What happened?
This process is going on. We live with Margarita very close from Sanon. Sanon is, Melanie Klein, no, Naomi Klein has made a film about the take on Sanon, a very interesting movie. And I guess this taking over means of production is very important. There is also a movement of younger people going back to the countryside. It's not very relevant yet because the corporations are very much interested in leasing. So there is a sort of contract farming. So to talk about means of production is complicated right now because we don't have the production system we had many years ago. And we have been deindustrialized. For instance, average worker in Argentina in the year 1975 used 2,000 words in Spanish. Now a worker uses 800 words, and his son probably 400 or 300 words. So the erosion is deindustrializing a country because language is an acquisition that is, for me, industry is the social capacity to resolve complex processes, not to have chimneys and smoke and contamination. This is capital, and this is David Noble's America by Design. So this has been explained very well. Everywhere, but in Argentina as well. No. Just there's less language. This happens in Germany as well. So you go there, and Germans use a lot of Microsoft.
Sounds like Orwell.
Yes. Yeah. But it's interesting that you mention Orwell because now we use the concept of 4,891, which is 1984, but the other way around. So we tend to vigilar or to look after what is to vigilar. ¿Cómo se dice? To watch. We like to watch what the power are doing. So we really don't like to be to explain what we do. we prefer to describe the power structures. Yes?
I think that's you were.
Was I was wondering about the migration from people from rural communities to urban communities.
Yeah.
When they're more or less living in ghettos when they get to these urban communities. Is this because the government is selling off land in rural communities to large corporations for the means of agricultural production, or why is this migration happening if people are moving towards something that isn't necessarily in their best interest?
No, yes, it's basically because the production system has changed when you had maybe 200 people working in a farm, or 50, or depends on the size. And then you have a machine, a tractor they have a GPS and goes alone. And you plug into MP3 or 4 and you even don't drive this tractor. And it can be, so that means that you have less labor involved. And all these people have to go, or they are polluted by, glyphosate, or what is glyphosate? Roundup. So Roundup-ready soybeans means millions of liters of cocktail of chemicals on our land. So if they stay, they get sick. If they don't stay, they go to the cities. Try to travel 6 in the afternoon in Plaza Constitución. This is hell. So Buenos Aires has a very nice side. Sao Paulo, Mexico, Rio de Janeiro have a very nice side, but the other side is terrible. We call that the urban horrors. It is unimaginable. It's really New Delhi or whatever. Yeah.
I would like to hear more about that interconnection within these movements in Argentina. Like, how are they collaborating? Are they collaborating or not? Like, do they have some type of common objectives?
No. But there is a common ground on debate, which is the first thing that struck us very interestingly. Because you had first the traditional left-wing people that came after the environmental or ecological movements. So the first who reacted against this system were assemblies who didn't accept the political parties, who wanted politic to be in their hands. The traditional left was fooling around, were trying to be the vanguard, but now there is a crossed debate. So everything has been debated permanently. And so you see persons or organizations that never have been in touch to each other, and now they are starting a common ground. I'm not very optimistic, but I think that because of the elections, some parties or small parties still try to be part of the parliament. But I believe more in the extra-parliamentarian side of the politics.
So long-term is to get to a position, long-term of these objectives and the long-term of this movement?
Well, most people agree on what we don't want, even though the idea of growth is very profound. So if you talk to someone and ask him to say, what do you think is growth? Yeah, and they will try to describe things and malls and consumption centers. But if you ask him or her to explain what exactly growth is, most people won't know in any level, including academicians, people in the academy. So most people raise some finger and say, well, growth is going that way. But There is no clear idea what growth means. And I think that now the debate is, what are we going to do? And the first thing is to go to a variety of smaller communities instead of, I guess, the idea of modernization, of the urban of the place of intelligence and the rural of the place of the dumbest people, which might have been so for many generations when you have had wolves and Caperucita Roja. Yeah. So when the forests were a dangerous place, or there was, then you had the idea. This is one part. I don't agree with David Harvey. The right of the right to a city. I guess the cities are in danger because they can easily collapse for many reasons. And the cities I know, I don't know very much about Vancouver, how it works, but cities are very, very risky regions. So there were many intellectuals who thought it is better to have dispersed small communities, very well connected, and local production and consumption, instead of having one chicken, as in America, traveling average thousands of kilometers from the place they are raised, don't ask me how, to the place they are consumed. So a yogurt in Europe travels about 2,000 kilometers. And in order to do so, you have to put a lot of energy and oil, not only for the pot of them. So the idea of transportation or producing so much milk, US export the same quantity of milk that is imported. So this is good for the statistics, but it is very bad for the environment, for the people, for accidents in the roads and so forth. And so the idea we have now is to discuss degrowth. Degrowth is based on the idea of Nicolas Georgescu-Roegen. Nicolas Georgescu-Roegen is a great economist who was a protege of Schumpeter. And he is the creator, basically, of the idea of ecological economics. Now, degrowth or décroissance is defended by people like Martinez Alier, Serge Latouche, Paul Oriès. So if you go to degrowth or decrecimiento, you will find a lot of debates going on, especially in Europe. But we have this as well. And then transition towns. So I guess that all the movements of cooperatives, labor movement, unions, a number of organizations have to stick together into clusters of more intelligent ways of defining an economy that is still based on a physics of Newtonian principles. So we have this leap towards an economy that is more, really more human. It has to be constructed. I was not very good in that answer, I guess. Yes.
I really like your idea of there being three lenses, the idea of the kind of material lens, the facts and figures, and then the judicial, legal, and then the philosophical. But I wonder if there's another one as well, which would be the historical lens.
Yes.
You mentioned Galeano, and a lot of what you said, you refer back to history. And I just wonder whether it's equally important that we know how we arrived at where we are and what's happening with history now. And I mean, in this country, for instance, there are movements to kind of colonize and rewrite history and to make history something that is different from what it was, and people's conception of how Canada arrived where it is now is kind of shifting. You know, they've changed the way new Canadians understand Canadian history. The current government's doing that kind of thing. And in the UK, they have a new education minister who's working on a a new national curriculum for history, which is based on this kings and queens and so on. So there's this movement to try and commodify history as well, and to change it in ways that we can't use history as a way of understanding the way the world works today. So I wonder if that's what you think about that.
Well, understood as a politics of the past. History is not only understanding the roots and the traditions and so on, but criticizing the past and say, well, I can't understand what is going on without going here back and pulling the cable and going to different ideas and structures that shape the present. Structures in for instance, this when you talk to functionaries, to people in the government, they will basically rely on the response on their particular specific portion of reality. So if they are on transportation, they will only respond on transportation. So the idea of totality is lost. And this is why it's a time loss. It's a loss of time to talk to functionaries. We are really focused on one side, of one single layer of activities. But yes, it is very important because some of the figures of history are relevant and others have lost the relevance. And now we are going back to people we never could have imagined to be relevant today. So instead of saying, no, everything has to change and we have now a new situation, such as many people in the postmodern position defend, we say, well, we don't want new wine in old bottles. So it is, we want to see what brings us here and what influence it has. And spatial organizations are very important in that sense. This is why we would have this more independent south in Argentina. Patagonia is very rebellious. It is very rebellious because it is very distant from Buenos Aires. It's very difficult to sustain from Buenos Aires the power which is so far. And this is what the reasons, I don't remember, but Canada has organized its labor movement. I guess it was in Saskatchewan or something that you had a very interesting movement, labor movement, and it's probably under the shadows of the towers of Toronto, that would have been not very easy. Yes?
Don't you think also, talking front stage, backstage, there's terrorism occurring? I mean, lots of terrors. They're happening every day all over different countries.
Yes.
As you shove people off the land and into the cities, and this happened in the 1600s.
Yeah, exactly.
Many times over history.
Yes.
People are forced into situations where they have to make change.
Yeah.
So they can help each other survive.
Yeah.
And that might be community gardens or whatever.
Yeah.
But one of the big things that happened in the late 60s, early 70s in this country was a lot of people decided they were going to go back to the land.
Yes.
And they found out that the huge corporations had bought this sort of farmland. Yeah. Government was subsidizing some of small farms, but nothing like they were subsidizing the big corporations. And the government in this country holds a lot of land, crown land, and that land is handed over to the mining companies, etc. But I think even people on the street at this point realize that something large is happening internationally.
Yes.
We moved from imperialist countries, colonizing countries, to huge multinational corporations that are colonizing. Now, as we move towards big companies like Monsanto that are buying up all of the production of food and producing food that has no seeds.
Yeah.
The next big thing for me is we're going to be paying all our money for food and transportation.
Yes. This is why Monsanto, which is signing a huge agreement with the Argentine government and has already achieved a law of seeds in Chile, which is known as the Monsanto law of seeds. So they are. So if you are a hip hopper or whatever, or you sing in the streets in Santiago or in Buenos Aires, they don't care. They even would pay an organization for empowerment of women or for whatever, for local exchange. They don't care about this because it is not the scale of activity doesn't affect them. So Monsanto, Nestlé, Syngenta, Cargill, Novartis, all these huge corporations are happy to have people dancing on the streets somewhere in the cities, while they still have the power to decide what you eat, where you eat, or if you eat at all. Yes?
I think for me, the issue is organization. The issue is very practical. People in this province voted for jobs that should come up over the environment, over human rights, over the promise, not the reality, but the promise.
Yeah.
In order to have any change, it seems to me, you have to have a vision.
Yeah.
You have to have organization. Because you're fighting the fascist regime.
Yeah.
So, in that context, how would you respond?
Right now, my idea is that would be not to use the word vision, but dreams. Dreams are far more important for human life than visions. This is why Martin Luther King said, "I had a dream." And I guess that the idea that this internal territory of dreams, of common dreams, is very strategic. And certain power structures know that, and that they're trying to intervene in that flow of dreams and through different means. So they are studying this. And but I think that we are able to counteract. It will sound very weird what I'm going to say, but they talk about money, we talk about love. I know it sounds very romantic, but if we don't sustain a part of utopia, then we are lost. So there are not many reasons to be too optimistic, because we have really climate change, huge proportions. We are seeing every year contamination, pollution, and extremes in the weather. And you have here right now a UV factor of 8 in Vancouver. We have in the southern part of Argentina 10 to 11. And it is very high, very extremely dangerous. So I don't know. I'm not a magician. I don't know what is going on. But I think that we can't do but to try to get into a serious discussion and to confront power wherever it is possible.
Confront the power,
Yeah.
not that organization.
Yeah.
And the question is whether something like the Occupy movement,
Yeah.
which I think you alluded to, whether that can do the job, or whether you have to go back to the old ideas of a structure and organization and leadership and continuity,
Yeah.
and building an organization that can defeat the system with dreams.
Yeah. If I think about the younger people is, I mean, people that are 18, 20, I've seen them in Europe, I've seen them in Latin America. They are far more anarchists than anything else.
But it might not be common because they don't know things like the history of the labor movement, where they are, and the people who've come before, and the people who've worked in the past. That takes
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, just to finish this idea, the unions are far away now because they are fighting for distribution and the reduction of objectives to distribution of wealth. It doesn't ask from where this wealth is coming from. So if they only ask for better wages, then you say, okay, so what do you mean by better wages? From where is this wealth measured in terms of money coming? So the simple distribution of wealth is not enough. We have to discuss with unions the same way as we discuss or try to discuss with political parties. And some political parties can't avoid but to discuss these issues. And we know that a part of the solution comes from the political parties as organizations, from unions. But there are new forms of organizations that are not that clear or that structured as the traditional political parties or organizations.
No, I appreciate that, but the issue is when you're fighting power,
yeah,
and you don't have an idea, if you're 19 or 20,
yeah,
or 30 or 50 or 60,
yeah,
you don't have an idea
yeah,
what you're fighting. You have no idea what that structure means and how they're going to respond on the street
yeah,
to your insurrection, and how important it is to build that organization. If we don't talk about how we build an organization that can defeat the system,
yeah,
then we're just involving theory.
yes, it is true that there is a need of organization. This has to be created everywhere all the time, and it is the concern of most part of the left, most part of the ecological movements and environmental movements, women collectives, incredible organizations for women organizations and gender studies and groups, and very active. And day by day, you have people falling from the system. So, and it is interesting that sometimes some phrases or words are stronger than a whole discourse, and you can really go into dissolving power discourses just by making one question, one relevant question. I have some examples of that, but yeah. I guess it was this incredible early books from Wilhelm Reich when he started to explain how to recognize a Nazi. And especially in a book that is known as Listen, Kleiner Mann, I don't know.
Listen, Little Man.
Yeah, exactly. And so in certain moments, this is what we need. We are in different levels of ideas and practices.
I think in different countries you have certain tipping points in history. And as a person that's been a social activist all my life, and is now at a position where I'm coming up to retirement, I'm finding more and more elderly people that have resources and too much time on their hands. They've worked in whether helping the poor, women's issues, and they're looking for places to go and they're looking for issues.
Yeah.
And I think what Alan was saying is important, because how do you organize across that? There's a lot of situations that are involved in, and we have people that come and they're saying, well, we're here, but we're kind of really working on the anti-GMO movement, or we're moving on this or that. But they're already realizing that this is all connected and we need to work together. Yeah. But what you really need as a group when you're coming together, or as an organization, and new people are coming all the time and wanting to deal with different issues, they want to have an understanding of how it all works and a vision of what we can do as we move forward as a country or internationally as we deal with issues. Because poverty issues in Vancouver are in a lot of ways the same same as they are in Argentina. Not as big at this point, but we still have a lot of problems here, and drawing those people in and dealing with their issues is really important.
Yeah. And there are different forms of poverty. One is the material forms of poverty. The other one is the cultural or consciousness poverty. And it's very interesting knowing you people, elderly people of Canadians, because many people would say, coming from other places, they say Canadians are cool people, cool in the sense of distant, cool. And this is not the case. Canadians are very engaged and can still go through this path of recovering what they have been in the 30s and in the 40s and the 50s. And the current situation of the Twitter revolution is probably running against these common interests.
When you're confronting an international corporation that's not doing it just for this country, but internationally, then you have to work as an international organization.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You spoke earlier about power of dreams.
Yes. Yeah.
And
I was improvising, but
I was just wondering, we talked a lot about what's happening in Argentina and things that should be maybe resisted or like are not in the interests of the people. And you said earlier that, you know, we generally agree on what we don't want, but
yes,
it's a lot harder to agree on what we do want. Could you maybe, I mean, this might be asking a lot, but could you maybe articulate what your dream for Argentina is? Do you have a dream for Argentina, and what is it?
Oh, yes. I have a dream that is inspired in certain experiences, personal, but also this person I mentioned, which is a contemporary of Harold Innis, Raúl Scalabrini Ortiz, who was a very radical student as a student and then wrote on the structure of railroads, British railroads in Argentina, very interesting. Harold Innis was also interested in railroads in Canada. But his master was Macedonio Fernandez, a poet. And he had the idea of a country that is covered by small communities. And he wrote that in the 30s. And there were very small groups of anti-colonial, not post-colonial, anti-colonial, a very small group of anti-colonial thinkers, including a tango author, to which Raúl Scalabrini belonged. The group was Forja. And in the 30s, they wrote incredible documents and declarations. And they had a dream, and we found many times that these dreams were feasible, that they were possible, that the noblesse of the people in the country or in the suburbs of Buenos Aires or Cordoba or Rosario, other places, are brilliant and that they are noble people and that they are open-minded, they read. Of course, it is the reason why dictatorships were against this openness. And I was in one of the shipyards near Buenos Aires, Rio Santiago. I worked at that time for a television crew, and we had a conversation with people of this shipyard. They were incredible as readers and theoreticians. They were worker unions, very bright, incredibly. And really, I think that these noble people should connect to each other You can find it in original or First Nations peoples or unions or in the countryside, and they would be very proud and happy to meet people like you and put it together, because you find these noble people everywhere. In China, China is going, wait a while, China will have, and China has inside China very interesting and strong debates. And ça va péter, say the French. A strong movement will come out from there. And so I think that the dream is that people that are still aware, the capacity, regardless of age, of place, to recover their consciousness and dreams, have the capacity to do so. And we see that in the northern part of Africa and other places. And you can organize maybe Syria and mess everything around with people shooting on one side or another, but this spring in Arabic countries and northern is very important, is very relevant in Brazil and other places. So this is the connection.
All right, well, I would like to thank you, Andreas, for such an insightful talk.
Thank you.